Empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. Shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men. Power Black men. Shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men to live extraordinary lives. Shatter the stereotypes. Shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men to live extraordinary lives.
Welcome to Shatter the Stereotypes, where the intention is to empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. This show is based on the simple idea that every Black man is capable of creating inner peace, dynamic health, great relationships, and financial abundance. Therefore, we provide insights and strategies to educate, motivate, and inspire Black men to reach their full potential and create the life of their dreams. So if you're ready for some high-octane motivation and inspiration that supports and empowers you to live the life you were born to live, get ready to shatter the stereotypes so you can build a life that lights you up and positively impacts the world. So now, let's shatter the stereotypes with your host, Coach Michael Taylor.
Hello and welcome to Shatter the Stereotypes, where our intention is to empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. You see, there's never been a shortage of Black male role models. There's only been a lack of exposure of those role models. So the intention here is to showcase and highlight Black men who are doing amazing things in the world. And joining me tonight is a man who is doing just that. His name is Dr. Mathew Knowles, and he is the founder of Music World Entertainment. He's a visiting professor at Texas Southern University, where he teaches courses on the entertainment industry. He is an author of several books, and he's also a sought-after speaker. But you probably recognize him as the father of the international superstar Beyoncé. And so without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Knowles to the show. Dr. Knowles, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, Michael. First of all, thank you for having me on your show. I just want to make two brief corrections because I don't want the president of Prairie View A&M giving me a call. I taught 8 years at Texas Southern. Okay. This is my second year teaching at Prairie View A&M, and that's a big rivalry in football between Texas Southern and Prairie View. So I certainly want to correct that, if I may. And then secondly, I have two superstar daughters, one named Beyoncé, the second named Solange.
And I wholeheartedly agree. Now, you were teaching at Texas Southern, and now you're at Prairie View. So you're actually a professor there now at the Prairie View?
Yes, I am. This coming semester, I will be teaching sports, event, and entertainment marketing. And then I alternate every other semester, I alternate with entrepreneurship.
Great. All right, so we're going to jump in with a few icebreaker questions. So first of all, tell us where you're from and tell us a little bit about growing up. What was that like for you?
Well, Michael, I'm from Gaston, Alabama, which is a little small town in Alabama, about 30, well, it was 30,000. It's gotten a little larger now. I grew up, Michael, on a dirt road with an outside bathroom. Neither of my parents had graduated from high school. My mother was from Marion, Alabama, and so she went to school with Coretta King, actually went to high school with Coretta King and Andrew Young's wife. But my parents both taught me entrepreneurship at an early age that I'm very, very proud of. I never went to a Black school in Gaston, Alabama. I integrated both Catholic elementary school, junior high school, as well as Gaston High School and University of Tennessee at Chattanooga.
Okay.
So my childhood was quite challenging. You know, I've been beaten, I've been spit on, I've been electric prodded for all those rights that we're fighting for today. I've actually looked racism in the eye.
Well, you're definitely shattering the stereotypes, what the media would have people believe about Black men. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, because of, number one, you're overcoming those obstacles and being the man that you are today. So now I want you to take a moment and name a woman who's inspired you to be who you are.
My mother,
Okay. And her name?
Helen Knowles.
Okay.
Helen Hogue, Hogue Knowles.
Nice. Now, name a man that you look up to and admire.
Mathew Knowles. My dad. My parents had a real influence on me and who I am today. There was one word that described my father that was gentle. He was 6'5", he weighed about 400 pounds, but he was gentle. And there's one word that describes my mother: tough. And I was able to get that combination from parenting. You know, my parents, very interesting. My dad had a day job as a produce truck driver. He made $30 an hour. I'm sorry, I wish he made $30 an hour. He made $30 a week.
Okay.
People make $30 an hour. He made $30 a week. But he convinced the owners of that truck to let him have it all the time. And he would go, his entrepreneurship would allow him, he would go and buy old houses, and he would tear them down, and he would sell the lumber, sell all of the metals, copper and aluminum. He would also do the same with old cars. He would offer, $20, $25, and he would sell all the parts. My mother, on the other hand, she was what we call a colored maid. She made $3 a day. And she convinced the white woman she worked for, as well as her friends, any hand-me-down clothing of any sort, they gave to my mom. And on the weekend, my mother and her two best friends would make these beautiful quilts that they would sell. And that's where I always knew. And Michael, I didn't quite know what it meant, but I used to always, we had a little hill on my yard, and I would just look up in the clouds and dream. That's why I tell young people, never stop dreaming. And I would dream one day I would be a businessman. That was my goal. If you would have asked me when I was 9, 10, 13, 14, what do you want to be one day, Mathew? I would say a businessman. That's what I always wanted to be, a businessman.
We're going to be talking about your book, The DNA of Achievers, and it sounds like your dad definitely had that DNA which he passed on to you.
Well, when I first wrote the book, and I'm on to my 6th book now, and I just have a knack to come up with these kind of catchy titles. I wrote The DNA of Achievers. I was inspired by, I flew a lot in years past, and I would always ask the person next to me, get up, start conversation. What do you do for a living? And you find someone that's passionate, they'll go on and on and on. And I began to notice these common traits that they had. And so that inspired me to write a book about these traits. And then I said, well, what am I going to title it? And when I said DNA originally, I didn't mean from a genetic standpoint. But now some issues of my health, I do look at it also as I understand genetics better. Genetics do have an effect of who we are, also intellectually as well, also even inspirationally, I believe.
Yeah. So really, we're going to jump into that in just a moment, go deeper into that book, because I thought it's a really powerful book. But if you knew you were going to be trapped on an island for 60 days and you could only take one book with you, what book would you take while you're stuck on this island?
Wow, that's a very good question. There's Malcolm Gladwell is my all-time favorite author. And for those of you that don't know, Malcolm Gladwell is a Black Canadian. And his book, Outliers, is one of my favorite books. And it talks about, and it really, he covered a lot of athletes, a lot of successful people, and some of the things they had in common. And he talks about one thing, that they put in this requirement of 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. And we often, and especially in today's microwave society, we don't want to put the time in to make ourselves better and to be the best that we can be. I love that book by Malcolm Gladwell, Outliers. So that would be my book.
Yeah, I love Malcolm Gladwell too. He's got some really powerful ideas. Talks a lot about tribes and building tribes, and
Right.
really fantastic thought leader. I mean, he's really amazing. Great book. As a matter of fact, I have not read that one yet, so I'm going to have to put that one on my list, The Outliers.
You have to read that.
Yeah. Now, if I gave you a magic wand, and with this magic wand, you could create anything your heart desires, what would Dr. Mathew Knowles be doing 10 years from now?
I know the answer to that. Hopefully, we never know, but I already have a strategy for that. So I'm 68 years old. So I would be 78 years old. I would be, first of all, with my loving wife, who's my best friend, Gina. She would absolutely be on my side, by my side. I hope we would be in a home. My wish is to be right there and hear the ocean. You see in my backdrop is the Pacific Ocean, where I am right now. That's a real photo. That's not a photo backdrop. It's not. But that I would want that. I would want to still be teaching. I absolutely am passionate about teaching. I love being a college professor. I would be also lecturing. Those are the things I would be doing. I would be teaching. I would be lecturing. I would be public speaking all over the world. I would be continuing to write books. And I would enjoy the fruits of my labor with my wife. That's what I would be doing. Hopefully healthy and happy.
That's the life, man. That's the life. Having that special someone in your life and doing what you're really passionate about, that's the ticket right there. Definitely. Now,
Michael, I just want to say that it took me a long time to understand, as men, we work so hard to provide for our family. We work so hard to be successful and to be the best. But as men, we don't put that same effort in happiness. And I'm at a part of my life that I'm putting more effort in happiness than I am in success and being successful. I just wanted to say that.
No, I agree. I mean, my primary focus has been the books that I've written. I've written a total of 8 books, actually, and I speak directly to that. I focus on what I call the changing roles of manhood and masculinity in society. And one of the things I coach men to do is to recognize the importance of relationships and connection and fulfillment versus just trying to accumulate stuff, the titles, the cars, the houses, the women in the cars and all that. So yeah, I agree with you. It's for us as men, and especially as Black men, I believe we have to shift our attention away from the things that are outside of us and more of the things that are inside of us, like the happiness and the joy and the passion and the purpose. So that's the reason why I do this show, to engage men in a conversation, to see things a little differently about what it means to be a man.
Well, I applaud you for that, Michael. And I tell you, this coronavirus has taught us that if you don't have that, those of you that don't have that, you're going through it. For those of us that do have that, and I'm grateful. I say it with gratitude that I do have that. Time is just flying away. I mean, it feels like yesterday was April, March, because I'm just enjoying life and really, spending more time at home. We've been safe. We spend 90% of our time at home, 90% of our time with each other. And there's not a night that we don't go to bed laughing, watching TV, and just sharing moments. Moments.
That's what it's all about, man. I tell you, I've been blissfully married for the past 18 years, so I can relate to what you're saying. Now, with everything that's going on right now regarding race relations, I'm curious. Now, there are some people who are optimistic about the future. There's others who are a little pessimistic. So where do you fall on that spectrum between optimism and pessimism for the future in general? Where do you fall?
Well, I'm realistic. That's where I fall.
Okay.
I'm realistic that we have a ways to go with racism. It's a fundamental structure, the structure of racism. It includes everything, Michael, from our whole police system has to change. We have to address poverty in the Black and brown community. We have to address education in the Black and brown community. We have to address health and wellness in the Black and brown community. We have to address the Black church and its messaging and what its role should be in the future in the Black community. And so there's a whole thing of structural racism that has to be addressed. And this election is the most important election of our lives. And if we don't understand that, you have to be on the log because if we don't put the right team and leadership, our grandkids and our great grandkids will be paying a dear price.
Absolutely. I agree. Now, I'd like you to now introduce Dr. Knowles to professional. We kind of touched upon some of the things you do, but tell us professionally, if I were to say, give me your bio, for the people who know nothing about Dr. Mathew Knowles, tell them what you do.
Well, 20 years I was in corporate America, Michael, and I teach entrepreneurship every other semester. So there's a word called intrapreneurship. And entrepreneurship is when you operate inside an organization or a company, a corporation, but you run your department, your division, your territory, if you sales, you run it as if it's your own company. And I did that, and I did it successfully. I was fortunate and grateful to be the #1 worldwide sales rep in the world for the medical division of Xerox for numerous years. And to be the first, or one of the first, I haven't met anyone else, but I'm not sure 100%, but one of the first to Black men, a Black person, period, to sell MRI and CT scanners in America. And one of the first to be a neurosurgical specialist in America. That's my background. Diagnostic imaging, also in an operating room as a neurosurgical specialist. That's a very demanding, intellectually, certainly demanding positions. Much more demanding than the music industry, trust me, in terms of intellect. And I don't mean that negatively, but you just gotta have it together when you're a Black man and you walk into the operating room and your name is Mathew Knowles and they're thinking you're a white man and they've never seen a Black man before in my position. And that patient head is wide open and that neurosurgeon is asking me, what should they do with my instruments? That's a very challenging moment where you're going to get asked a series of questions, rapid fire, and you had better have each and every answer correctly. So I did 20 years of that. And at the same time, and towards the latter part, and I always said, I'm going to do corporate America for 20 years. I learned tremendously while I was in corporate America. But then managed care came about. And for those of you, managed care, as we know now, it mandates what is spent for our medical in every way, from the surgical procedures to prescriptions. But the neurosurgeon called me, paged me, and said, come to my office. I thought maybe the patient had elapsed. And so I went to his office. He said, Mr. Knowles, I really like you. but I can no longer use your instruments because I received a letter saying my cost per procedure is too high in the operating room. And so if I don't make a significant change immediately, I won't have the opportunity to practice here. And so I can't use your equipment anymore. And I then called my former wife and my friend today, Tina, and I said, you know, Tina, I can no longer do this. It was a defining moment for me. And so I had to make a decision. And I had to ponder, and I had to really struggle on what truly was my passion at 40 some years old. And it was music. And that's how I got into the music industry, in a combination of the fact that my oldest daughter, Beyoncé, was a young kid, 10, 11 years old, and they had lost on Star Search, which would be equivalent to American Idol today. And they were heartbroken. So I asked the host, you know, what does a dad do? And he said, you know, those who win, they never go on to be successful. Those who lose, and he started naming Boyz II Men, went on Usher, and went on and on and on. Those that lose go back and they rethink, restart, refocus, make changes in their organization, and that's how I got in the music industry.
Yeah.
And
So when you were working for Xerox, were you also promoting your groups at the same time, or did you stopped Xerox and then you jumped right into music?
No. I did 20 years of corporate America.
Right.
See, thank you for allowing me to tell my story. His story, what the media has says goes like this. He worked at Xerox, he quit Xerox to then go into the medical system, the music industry for his daughter. That is a lie. That is not accurate.
Okay.
And so I thank you for giving me the opportunity of telling my story rather than his story. Because his story, we already know most of the time is a lie.
Right.
That's not what happened. I sold copiers for 1 year of my 10 years at Xerox. I was in a medical division. I sold zero radiography in the 80s, which was the leading modality for breast cancer detection. I left there. I sold MRI, magnetic resonance imaging, and CT scanners with Philips Medical Systems. And I left there and worked with Johnson & Johnson in a division called Codman as a neurosurgical specialist. So 10 years after I left Xerox, I then went into the music industry. 10 years after I left, I was still in corporate America.
Yeah, that's a different story that you hear through the media.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you cleared that up. So just real quickly, another question. Obviously, you're jumping into music, so you obviously have a love and a passion for music anyway. So just reflecting back over your experience with the group, any regrets?
Are you speaking with Destiny's Child or just?
Yes, Destiny Child, with Destiny Child.
Oh, absolutely not. How can I have regrets with the number one leading selling female group in the history of music, Michael? Why would I have any regrets? That's a mountaintop that 99.9999 will never reach.
Right.
I absolutely have no regrets.
Good to hear. I'm really glad to hear that. So if I were to look at your music playlist right now, if I say, hey, man, let me check out your iPod or whatever, who are some of the groups you'd be listening to?
Man, I love that question. And I'm laughing, I'm smiling, Michael, because Jen and I, we drove here from Houston to out in Southern California 3.5 weeks ago. And so I do a lot of these interviews, and somebody asked me, what was you listening to? And I was getting tired, and I said, I need some energy. So I told her, put on Biggie Small. And so she put on Biggie Small. Then after that, she said, well, what do you want to hear now? I said, put on some Snoop Dogg. Start with Gin and Juice. And everybody always a little surprised. And then I went to my traditional Earth, Wind, and Fire. That's and Marvin Gaye. But that's where I started with Biggie Small and Snoop Dogg.
There you go. Now, you teach courses on entertainment and so forth. So with all the technology these days, and, everybody's got a YouTube channel, and, you got all this access to getting your stuff out there. What do you teach in terms of, let's say there's a guy that comes to you and says, I'm thinking about getting into the music industry. If you were in one of your classes and someone said to you, where should I start? What would your advice be to get into the music industry? Let's say that they're a singer. They're a singer.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And I was thinking as you was talking, I teach music business, but I also teach marketing and entrepreneurship, non-music related. But in those courses of music, if somebody came to me, first of all, and said they were a singer, I would tell them, please don't ever say that to anyone. Because in our industry, we can go and find a singer on any given Sunday at any given Baptist church in America that can out-sing the favorite artists on the charts right now. This is not about singing. Saying that you're a singer is like saying you're a basketball player and you can shoot a layup. Really? You know how to shoot a layup? Wow. I'm going to give you a #1 draft pick because you know how to shoot a layup. Okay. No, we look for entertainers, the ability to entertain, to have a complete package along with imaging, along with understanding and having those work ethics, and being able to listen and learn, because it takes a while to learn this industry. So I look at those traits for recording artists. I don't immediately say, I want to hear you sing. I have a sofa that I've had for years at Music World. I want to sit and just talk to you, understand where your head's at, because you can be the greatest singer in the world. You can even be the greatest entertainer in the world. But if it's a hobby instead of a passion, who cares? It's a hobby. You're not going to put in the work. You're not going to, because what coexists with passion is work ethics. They coexist. So those are the things I look at.
Now, let's say you're at a party and someone recognizes you and say, hey man, there's Mathew Knowles. And they happen to be very talented, maybe have a mixtape in their pocket or something, and they're just looking for that next opportunity. And let's say this person walked up to you and said, Dr. Knowles, I understand you're a music mogul, and I'm curious, would you be willing to listen to my tape or whatever? How would you react to someone, or what would you say to someone that may approach you in that type of environment to try to get you to listen to their music?
Well, I consider myself, being a humble person. I don't look at me with all that. So I'm always teaching, Michael. I'm always teaching. I would say young man, and I would probably say young man, come on, brother. Like, who is giving out a mixtape CD today? Come on, brother. You can't. That's a bad look, man.
That's a bad move.
You need to email me something. Tell me where I can go see you on YouTube. But don't give me a mixtape CD. Come on, man.
That's so 1980s, huh?
That's what I say. Media indication, like, wow, you don't get it. You don't understand streaming. You don't understand that today.
Yeah. So I love how you've taken a passion, which is music, your love of music, and obviously you brought this group up. So are you now seeking out artists for your label or your company, or are you primarily just teaching now? What are you doing with Music World Entertainment?
I'm living my passion, Michael, and I've shared my passion is educating and motivating.
Okay.
In those areas of entrepreneurship, as well as music business. I I really focus on entrepreneurship as much as I do in the music industry. And so that's what I'm doing today. And that's how I'm living today. I don't look, music world, we stopped years ago uh, after I lost my last $700,000 on a Houston girl group who just didn't get it. Um, and 5 or 6 years ago, I said, this is it. This is not for me. This is not where my passion is whatsoever. You know, people don't know. They don't know. Only 1% of the whole industry in the world of 7.2 billion people, of artists, 1% are profitable. 99% lose money, either for the record label or themselves. So this is a very small niche of success. Fortunately, at Music World, we've had a more like a 25, 30% success rate, which is amazing because we are in a very, very, failure is highly huge numbers in the music industry. Yeah. That's why you see artists today and you don't hear about them 3 years later. Nicki Minaj, we don't talk about her anymore. I can go on and on. 3 years ago, they were like the hot topic. Now they're gone.
Got you. Now, so let's now dovetail into your book, The DNA of Achievers, because like yourself, I'm really passionate about entrepreneurship. As a matter of fact, I wrote a book called The New Face of Entrepreneurship, An Entrepreneur's Guide to Joy, Passion, and Profits in Business. And basically in my book, what I talk about is how to integrate spirituality, intuition, imagination, and really understanding that the entrepreneur is the heart and soul of the company. And so many times we put emphasis on the mechanics of starting and running a business. But I say, if you really want to be successful as an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to understand who you are as the heart and soul of the company. And so I really challenge entrepreneurs to rethink and reframe the whole idea of what it means to be a leader in business. And so that kind of dovetails into what you're talking about in terms of entrepreneurship. So I was intrigued by your book, The DNA of Achievers, because I believe success leaves clues. And if we listen and if we're open-minded enough to learn from people who have done what we want to do, we can gain some tools to become successful. So my first question is, what's the primary message of the DNA of Achievers? What's the primary message?
Traits of successful people and traits that you can learn that can hopefully in some way help your success.
Yeah, and so when you start talking about traits, one of the traits that you didn't speak directly to is resiliency. And this is something that's really important. Resiliency, the ability to bounce back from adversity. And you are a perfect example of that because you've gone from selling machines and so forth to music to now being a speaker and an author. And you've had some challenges in your own life, one being a health challenge. So can you talk a little bit about the health challenge that you had to overcome?
Well, I do, but I just want to make sure we all know there is a chapter, I believe it's chapter 7 or 8, that's learning from failure. That's the name of the chapter, which is about resiliency. And it talks about failure and mistakes are opportunity to grow, not a reason to quit. So I just wanted to make sure that the listeners they know that.
And we're actually coming back to that chapter, actually. That failure chapter is very important. So we're going to come back to that. We're going to touch on that too.
But a year ago, actually, Michael, I told you before we were just talking and getting to know each other. And by the way, you're a really good brother. I've learned as I've gotten older to really trust my gut with people. And I can, it just comes out of the screen that you're a good man. Thank you for that. But a year ago, and I for 10 years and was the #1 sales rep in the world for zero radiography, which was the leading modality for breast cancer. A rarity, we're thinking it's a rarity. I've since now understand there's way more men than want to admit. I came up with male chest cancer is the words that I use. I think messaging is important. Also known as, for women, breast cancer. And literally a year ago today, I had mastectomy. A year ago today. I'm very happy to say every 6 months, I've had two. Just recently, about 4 weeks ago, had a mammogram, and so it was negative. I'm cancer-free. It fortunately was stage 1A, but for me, it comes to genetics. I knew a whole lot about anatomy and breast cancer. I knew very little or anything about genetics, DNA and genetics. All of us have what we call a BRCA gene, which is in all of our bodies that help throttle away cancer genetically. Mine's is mutated. And what that means is I have a higher risk, not necessarily that I would get it, but a higher risk of male chest cancer, also known as breast cancer for women, pancreatic cancer, prostate cancer, melanoma. I have a higher risk of getting cancer in those 4 areas. So I have to routinely now, for the rest of my life, which is a very small thing to do, get an MRI. And I used to sell an MRI, so I'm one of the nuts that actually enjoy getting in a tunnel, listening to the banging of the gradients. So I have to get an MRI every 6 to 12 months for those areas. And I have to go to a dermatologist for melanoma, for moles, to make sure they're not cancerous.
Well, again, I thank you for sharing that, because that's, we're talking about resiliency in terms of entrepreneurship, but for Black men, we have to understand that in most cases, we lead the nation in most health-related illnesses and death. And the majority of those are preventable. We aren't talking about these issues. We aren't taking very good care of ourselves physically. So that's a really important part that we as Black men must address. So I'm so glad to hear that things are going well for you. You've bounced back. And again, you're showing your resiliency in lots of different ways, but I'm just really happy to hear of your positive results that are coming up from your test. So,
Michael, thank you for that. And I like sharing this. I like talking about it because you're so right, Michael. It's preventable. If you find it early, there's a huge chance that the outcome will be fine. But if you start finding at stage 4, that's not going to be a very good outcome, unfortunately. So early detection is the key.
Yes.
That's the key, early detection. And when I talk about the messaging of the church, that's one of the areas that I believe we have to understand. Faith and science goes together.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Too many times, I know, back in the day when my grandparents had this thing where if we were sick or hurt or whatever, they say, well, pray about it. Well, praying about it is not necessarily going to fix it. So we need to make sure that we get the medical care to take care of it and not just think Jesus is going to fix everything for us. So it's important that we invest in ourselves and have that annual exam. There's no excuse for us not to have an annual exam. We should, we should have an annual exam, as simple as that is, because we can catch so many things and prevent so many unnecessary deaths.
Well, let's go one step further, and I'll get off this, but it's very important. There are companies now out there that will give screening, will mail to your house a screening exam that you only have to put saliva in a bottle and mail it back. And it will screen for cancer It will screen for heart disease. So it's a very easy thing to do now. I didn't know about this when I had my before I had my surgery. There's
Yeah.
companies. There's one called Invitae. If somebody said, "Well, what's a company?" The one I use is Invitae that allows you to understand, and they go through a series of information that can help save your life one day.
Yeah. How do you spell that, Dr. Knowles?
Invitae is Invitae.
Okay.
Invitae.
Yeah, let's put it out there. So that might save somebody's life, put that out there. So thank you for sharing that info. So we're talking about the DNA of achievers, and we talked about resiliency. So I do want to jump into failure, because that's one of the things that I think a lot of entrepreneurs are scared of. And I'm gonna say this, and I learned this from my mentor. His name is Wayne Dyer. Dr. Wayne Dyer no longer is with us, unfortunately, but he taught me something about failure that I loved. And he says, there is no such thing as failure. There is only the non-attainment of a desired result. So we set a goal. We want to attain that goal. If we don't make it, we say that we failed. The truth is, it's not necessarily failure. We just didn't attain the result that we were looking for. The problem is, too many people, when that happens, when they don't attain that result, then they start beating up on themselves, thinking they are a failure. They start, again, going into a depression, or I'm not good enough. They have this conversation about, I shouldn't try anything again because I'm afraid of failure. So talk just a little bit about the importance of, number one, not attaining the results that we want, but still being willing to put forth the effort and keep working until we accomplish our goals.
Oh, Michael, I love the definition of not obtaining results. I actually love that a lot. But we're talking messaging, and I talk a lot about messaging and how messages are heard. But often we make mistakes in life, or we don't obtain those results. Some society calls it failure. I've learned that that's an opportunity to grow. I have never in my lifetime, not one time, have I learned from my successes. I've never learned from my successes.
You're so right. You're so right.
I was the number one sales rep worldwide. I didn't learn from being a number one sales rep. I learned when I was the number 3 sales rep how to maybe possibly become the number 1 sales rep. Or I learned when I didn't get a sale. Walking back to my car, what did I say? What did I do? What could I have done differently? Did I have the information? So I view it as an opportunity whenever we don't reach our required or desired results. But also what comes often, and often with Black men, and we're also talking about Black men, is ego. So I thought I would give today, and I like to do this. And by the way, side note, the number one thing I teach is not the courses and by their names. I teach young men and women critical thinking. That's what I teach first and foremost, is critical thinking, because that's the key. But ego is the anesthesia that deadens the pain of stupidity.
Oh, wow. That's a tweetable moment. That's a tweetable moment.
That is what ego is, the anesthesia that deadens the pain of stupidity.
Wow.
And as Black men, we often fail also because we have these huge egos. And we don't want to admit that we haven't obtained our desired goals, and we keep running ourselves and our heads into a brick wall because we don't want to admit that, and don't want to admit that maybe it's not an attainable goal, or maybe we're going about it incorrectly, incorrectly, and we need more information, which is why education and knowledge is so important in life.
Yeah.
A lot of entrepreneurs fail because they don't have the knowledge. They don't understand finance. They don't know what P&L, profit and loss statement, and how to read one. They don't know all of those key elements of marketing. They don't know what is entrepreneurship. They don't know. It's the who, it's the what, it's the why. Who is my customer? What is my product? And why should they buy it? They don't know that. And that's why they fail.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a piece I think that all entrepreneurs should understand, that failure is a part of success as long as you learn from it. One of my favorite saying is, fail fast, learn faster. Because so many times you're going to have a desired result that you're not going to reach. That's all it is. You're just not going to reach it, but you can learn from that and then figure out how to get to where you want to be, where you want to go. And that's critical to success. Now, I want to talk about vision. You have a chapter about vision. I will assert that the overwhelming majority of people in the world have no clue, no vision for themselves or their lives. They've never taken the time to just sit down and visualize what it is they're committed to making happen in their lives. So talk about the importance of having a vision.
Well, we have some smart people watching and listening right now. We know when we think of vision, we mean sight, eyes. So it's seeing the future, having an idea what that future could look like, and call it an idea, and having a vision. When I said I was leaving corporate America and I was going to go into the music industry, people thought I was crazy, but I had a vision. There's a reason why I named my company Music World Entertainment. I didn't name it Music United States Entertainment. I named it Music World because in corporate America, I had experienced the world. At Philips, our home office was in the Netherlands, and I spent quite some time there, quite some time in London. But what I always like to tell a visionary, it's an extremely, extremely lonely road. And just know, it's a lonely, lonely road when you're a visionary. And some of the mistakes sometimes that we make when we're a visionary is we'll go and ask Michael. I'll say, well, Michael, I have this idea, because that's, a vision idea. I have this idea. What do you think about it? That's the wrong thing to say, the wrong thing to do. True visionary says, Michael, I have this idea that I'm going to be in the music industry. And what I need from you is I need you to give $100,000 investment. And this is what your return will be. I don't want to come up and say, hey, Michael, I have this idea. I'm going to get into the music industry. It's no longer my vision. I mean, I don't want to hear your opinion.
Right.
So we have to be key and really understand what a true visionary is. And there's another chapter that goes hand in hand. And the DNA of achiever is like a crossword puzzle. Passion and work ethics go hand in hand. Visionary and risk-taking go hand in hand. You find a visionary, you'll find someone who's taking risks, because sometimes and often it's never been done, or it might not have been done successfully. So you're taking a risk with this vision, but it's a calculated, educated risk that you're taking.
Yeah, and you got to be willing to take risk. And I'll assert that I think that from an entrepreneurial perspective, in a lot of cases, the greater the risk, the greater the reward. The more we're willing to invest in ourselves, and you have to have that clear vision. I think that's even why the good book says, without vision, people perish. So as an entrepreneur, without vision, you can't grow your company. You can't grow your idea. So it's important to have the vision. But the challenge that I think, Matthew, what most people have is that little four-letter word, fear.
Mm-hmm.
They're too afraid to take those risks. So what would you say to that person that, is maybe thinking about starting their company, but there's that little voice in their head that keeps telling them, man, you can't do that. How do you help people move through that fear to take those risks?
So now what you've done and done it well is you've gone to chapter 10. When I talk about the 10 traits, the last trait is thinking outside of the box. Most of us, Michael, we've been conditioned. A child doesn't come out of the womb being racist. No kid is born a racist. We're conditioned by the media, by our parents, by our neighbors, by our friends, and we become racist. The same thing, with fear. We don't just start out being fearful. We're conditioned. And what happens is we were taught at an early age, especially Black men and women, we were taught at an early age by our parents, by our school teachers, unfortunately, by kids, society, that you can't do this. You can't open your own business. You can't go into the music industry. You can't be a doctor. You can't. All of the reasons why we can't, we've been conditioned. And the reasons why is because you're Black, because you're female, because you're a Black man, because you're gay, because you're poor, because you're brown. All of these reasons we've been told why we can't do something. And we heard messaging like, boy, you'll never be worth a hill of beans. Boy, it ain't no damn way you're going to be able to do that. Stop wasting your time. These are the messages we got as kids. And those messages we still hear today. And guess what? Imagine we had a box right now and I asked you to get inside of that box. And I said, what are you experiencing? Walk around, Michael. You would probably say, I keep hitting these walls. And that's what most people do all day long. They hit these walls. I coined it box in thinkers because we've been conditioned. Secondly, Michael, we want someone just like ourselves to be in that box. And I commonly say, if you're a hater, guess who's in your box? Another hater. You're not gonna have a smart person in there. You want a hater in there. And those are the conditioning and the reasons of fear is because we're box-in thinkers.
Absolutely. It's interesting because when I started writing back in 1995, I actually sent my manuscript to 60 different publishers. Now, this is in 95, so you didn't have the internet the way you have it today. So basically, you have to send in your manuscript, with the proposal, and you wait for a response through the mail, right? So I sent my book proposal to 60 different publishers. I got 59 rejections. My 60th one, I was waiting for the last one to respond. I get a letter, and the lady says, I like your book. Let's talk. So I call her up. She says, I really enjoyed your book. She says, but we have a slight problem. She says, please don't take this the wrong way. The book was titled, Brothers, Are You Listening? A Success Guide for the 90s, targeted specifically to Black men, right? She says, our research shows that Black men don't read books. She says, but if you would be willing to change the title, I would love to publish it. Now, at the time, I could have really used that little advance. I needed the money bad. I mean, it would have came. But there's this thing called integrity that for me, I was like, man, I really appreciate the offer, but it's like you asking me to change my child's name. I can't change the name of the book because it's specifically designed to a specific group of people. And she says, I understand that, but if we're going to take it on, we have to get a return on our investment. She had all this business speak. And in no way was she being racist, okay? She was just based on numbers. I get where she came from. But my point here is that I had a vision. I was willing to take the risk. I was thinking outside of the box because I knew that there had to be Black men out there who would read books, because I was a Black man who loved books. Now, you were mentioning earlier about the small percentage of entertainers that actually are profitable. Well, did you know that, and well, you probably know this, that the overwhelming majority of books will never sell 500 copies in its lifetime? You're aware of that, I'm sure.
Aware of that. I'm aware of that.
So in 1995, with no internet, no marketing, in 95, I sold 1,000 copies of my book from my car.
Well, congratulations, my brother. Congratulations to you.
I went around to beauty shops and I would set the books up on consignment. I said, look, if you don't sell them, give them back. You know, I had book signings in beauty shops. I had book signings in restaurants. Anybody, I actually sold a policewoman a copy of my book who was giving me a ticket.
And that's because you were very passionate about.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the points that you're making in this book, which I'm highly recommending the viewers to pick up a copy, but the points that you're making in this book really summarize what it takes to be successful. Because when we get the mind, when we create the mindset and we have the vision, we're willing to take risks, we're willing to think outside of the box, it lays the foundation for us to accomplish anything. So,
yeah. Well, Michael, I went a step further in the DNA of achievers, and sometimes I pinch myself. I'm hesitating because I've written 5 books and 2 were bestsellers at Amazon, DNA being of achievers being one. Each chapter, I have 3 people I interview, and I've learned that's my trademark. I like to interview others. I don't want my listener, my reader, just to hear my perspective. I like multiple perspectives. And these are the type of people: the president of Sony ATV, the former president of L'Oreal Worldwide, the former general manager, 10 years for the Texans. B. Smith, her last interview before she got Alzheimer's, the president of the Grammys Association. I'm talking about, when I title it highly successful people, I literally mean highly successful people. So I just wanted to say these are the traits that they all, I didn't ask them, I just let them talk. I knew them all personally. Nancy Brown, the president of American Heart Association. I can go on and on. These people are like on the who's who of success. And they all had these traits, similar traits. And I think most people are smart people, and they say, well, why is it that most of these people had these 10 traits? That's what I would ask myself. And the fact that they did, I think I will at least read it. And audiobooks. I mean, I give you options. Some of you like audiobooks. We live in a different age. So we have that too for you.
Yeah. And so I want you to speak to, you're familiar with Anthony Robbins, the motivational speaker, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And he says something that I absolutely love and commit to. And he says the key to success is what he calls CANI, C-A-N-I, constant and never-ending improvement. So I want you to speak directly to the Black men who are watching this and talk about the importance of investing in our own potential, meaning reading books, listening to audio programs, going to seminars. Talk about how important that is to expand our minds and our horizons so that we can succeed.
Yeah, it reminds me of when I got my Ph.D. It was a book called The Human Potential that I read, and it talked about the inside of us, what our potentials are. We have so many tools today that we didn't have 25 years ago. And so it gives us less of a reason not to get knowledge and information. I mean, you can go e-learning and online, and you can take pretty much any course you can imagine. If I want to know the answer of how many people live in the United States, all I have to do is Google and type in how many people live in the United States. I can even misspell United, give it to me. So my point is that we have access to information today. So it's really no excuse that you can't take an e-learning course or online course or Google information. I'm constantly learning. And I think successful people never say that I'm at the height and I don't want to learn anymore. I mean, I use myself. The fourth week of August, I began at Harvard University. I'm taking a leadership course. I want to be a better and more knowledgeable leader. And I want to learn. I want to learn from other leaders. So I've always continued to learn. Almost daily, I learn something. Man, I didn't know anything before the coronavirus about Zoom. I've probably done 4 Zoom calls. I now have my earplugs connected to my computer. I didn't know how to do that 4 months ago. There was no way I can invite you to a Zoom call. I could right now go and pull up a video. You know, I learned technology. And for me, it's always been failure is how I learned it. I learned the best is when I failed at it. So I encourage constant learning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, with that being said, how can people find out more about your books and learn what you're up to, maybe hear you speak? How do they contact you? What's the best way?
The best way is just Google my name. MathewKnowles.com. Can't get any simpler than that. And there's 1 T in Matthew instead of 2, but I'm sure it'll direct you if you don't spell it with 2 T's, with 1 T. So it's my name, MathewKnowles.com. And once you go there, it'll tell you everything about me. It'll tell you about the 5 books, and you can order them. And I reduced the price because of the coronavirus to $9.95. I'll sign the book and mail it to you. It'll tell you the topics that I speak on and how to book me to speak. My books are The DNA of Achievers, Racism from the Eyes of a Child, The Emancipation of Slaves Through Music, Media and Public Relations in a Digital Age, and how do we use digital. And then my last book came out in December, Destiny's Child, The Untold Story, My Story versus His Story. By the way, his story would lead you to believe that Destiny's Child was my first endeavor in the music industry. There's a rapper in Houston that I first managed named Lil O. Lil O was my first major record deal that I ever got in my career. Lil O is the first artist to feature this young group called Destiny at the time on his first single called Can't Stop. So his story would lead you to believe something totally different, the Jedi mind trick. So every time I get this opportunity, I want to tell my story.
Well, I appreciate you sharing the truth. And I like I said, I'm halfway through your book. I haven't completed it, but I'm halfway through it. I'm loving it. It really does lay out some really amazing traits that we need to incorporate within ourselves if we want to be successful. So time flies when you're having fun. So now I want to give you an opportunity, Dr. Knowles, just to close with any closing thoughts that you have to the audience on whatever's on your mind.
Well, I always like to tell stories, Michael. And I think the story I like to share today is And again, thank you for the opportunity. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Um, I actually, in October, will have my own podcast. We'll talk more about that soon. But I traveled a lot uh, through this coronavirus. I haven't. I stay at home. And when I do go out, I have to say this before we close. I wear a mask. And I wear a mask because I want to protect the other person. And I hope the other person has that same respect for me, that they want to protect me. I know four people personally. That president of L'Oreal is now dead because of the coronavirus. So I just, we didn't talk about it, but I can't, I would be remiss if I didn't say that. But the story I like to leave is, I was at the LAX airport and I was going down the escalator, Michael, and there was a nun from Mexico and she had a jar and she had, please give to the missionary. And boy, did she misspell missionary, but that's not the point. Uh, I've learned to give and not be judgmental. In my younger years, I'll be like, oh, they're going to use it for this, or they're going to use it for that. As I've gotten older, I don't do that anymore. I give. And everybody's amount of giving is a personal thing. What might be a lot to one person might be a little to another. So I gave. And the nun gave me a card. And I have a habit, Michael, that not so much now, but in the old days, when people were passing out cards, you give me your card, I put it in my jeans, and the next few days I put it in a next pair of jeans. And about a month later, I finally read, after I had a stack of cards, I remember I was on Kirby at the car wash. And I finally read what was on the back, and that's the message. And it said, pray not for a life free from trouble. Pray for triumph over trouble. For what you and I called adversity, God, the universe, whatever name, calls opportunity. I want to say that again so you clearly understand. Pray not for a life free from trouble. Pray for triumph over trouble. For what you and I call adversity, the universe, God, calls opportunity. We will have bad days in our life. We have it now with the coronavirus. We will modify and adapt and change our behavior. It goes back to what we talked about earlier. Attainable goals, and sometimes we don't make them and reach them. But look at the opportunity that we have. God, we have opportunity to spend more time with family than ever before, opportunity to read and get more knowledge, opportunity to market to our customers daily, opportunity to learn and grow. This has been an opportunity.
Yeah.
It's just how we look at it, half full or half empty. It's like I was once checking in a hotel, and a bellman was helping me with my books in a box, and the hallway was so long. And I said, man, this is the longest hallway I've ever seen. And he looked at me, he says, Dr. Knowles, it's not the destination, sir. It's the journey. So what journey are you on? What is your adversity? What opportunity exists for you right now?
There you go. I actually wrote an entire book called Adversity is Your Greatest Ally. And that book was the result of me going through a divorce, a bankruptcy, a foreclosure, a deep state of depression. I was actually homeless for 2 years living out of a car. So I know a thing or two about overcoming adversity. And I really love that quote because that's the way I see it. There's always a lesson and a gift in every adversity if we're willing to look deeply enough. So Dr. Knowles, it has been my absolute pleasure to have you on the show, man. Thank you for showing up in a way that you are shattering the stereotypes about Black men in so many different ways. And I'm just so glad we've had this opportunity to connect. I don't believe there are any accidents in a perfect universe. And I believe we were brought together by divine appointment to share wisdom and information with the others to empower them. So again, I want to thank you for spending an hour with us and sharing on Shatter the Stereotypes.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Michael. I think we met on LinkedIn, didn't we?
Yes.
That's the only social media that I really engage. It's a very valuable tool. And I was very, very engaged when I read what you had written about yourself and what you were doing. And so thank you. You're doing a very, very important thing, especially for our young and even our older Black men. So I applaud you for that, sir. And I thank you for that, sir. And please be safe.
Absolutely. You too. So this has been another episode of Shatter the Stereotypes. And I want to close with this simple idea. And it was based on the conversation I had with a previous guest. And she was commenting on the importance of saying yes to life. So I want you to say yes to life. Know that you have everything you need already inside of you to create an extraordinary life. But you've got to be willing to put forth the effort. And it begins with vision, taking risks, not being afraid of failure, and just waking up to who you truly are as a human being. So be positive. And as Dr. Knowles says, stay safe right now. Stay safe. And we'll see you next episode. Take care.